Well, folks, we are 4 days from the biggest election of our lifetime, and it's back. One last chance. This time it's more important than ever. Get 47% off your new Daily Wire Plus annual membership with code FIGHT. Then make sure you're with us on election night. Our full coverage starts 6 p.m. Eastern. And yes, we will be live all night long until we have a winner. So maybe we'll be there until Saturday. Giving real coverage in real time on the night it really matters. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code FIGHT for 47% off your new Daily Wire Plus membership. And be here to watch history unfold live on Tuesday.
November 5th. The night America's fate is decided. As the final votes are counted and a nation waits for the outcome, join us to break down the live election results as only Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, and Jeremy Borick can. With special guests appearing live in studio, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, Dennis Prager, and Spencer Klavan. Daily Wire Election Night 2024. Get real-time results and exclusive insights from the most trusted names in conservative media. This is more than an election. It's history in the making. Join the Daily Wire as each vote is counted, each state called, and each race decided.
Well, there's going to be a lot of stress that night because, as it turns out, this election is unbelievably close. And people ask me all the time, who do I think is going to win? Listen, my gut says that Donald Trump is going to win. And then sometimes in the darker moments, your gut says the other way. But I'm just going to give you the data because the data matters a lot more than whatever my gut says. So right now, according to the Real Clear Politics polling average, the national polling average, Donald Trump is up on Kamala Harris 48.4 to 48.1. It's a dead heat. If you look at the battleground states, Trump has opened up a bit of a lead in Georgia. He seems to be up about 2.6 points in Georgia. He's up 1.4 in North Carolina. He is up 2.4 in Arizona. Okay, the most likely scenario right now is that he wins all of the so-called Sun Belt states, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. There's a good shot that he picks up Nevada as well. And that takes him to 268. If he were to lose the other swing states, if he were to lose Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Kamala Harris would then win the election 270 to 268 in the Electoral College. Now, the good news is that right now, if you look at the Real Clear Politics polling average in Pennsylvania, Trump has had some late breaking activity there. He's up just a little bit. Echelon Insights actually says he's up more than a little bit. They say he's up maybe 5 points in Pennsylvania. But you're also seeing countervailing data coming in terms of the early voting. Now, I warned you yesterday not to look at the early voting as dispositive. It doesn't tell you all that much. We don't have good comps. We don't know whether the early voting is cannibalizing the day of voting. We don't even know whether the people who are voting in the name of the Democratic Party are voting for Democrats. We just know that they're registered Democrats who are, in fact, voting. And so you're seeing a lot of mixed data. So the GOP is outperforming its early voting data from 2020. They're performing a little bit behind their early voting data in 2016. The Washington Post says the 2024 election has set records for pre-election day votes. Republicans are increasingly excited about numbers that show their side has embraced early voting much more than it did in 2020. Elon Musk has gone so far as to predict that these numbers spell victory for Donald Trump, but there are a lot of reasons not to overinterpret the data that Musk and his allies are citing, including the fact that 2020 had an extraordinary number of mail-in ballots, that some early votes, again, are cannibalizing the day of balloting, and we actually don't know who people are voting for. So the early indicators are that Kamala Harris is lagging in the black vote in North Carolina. Also, there are some indicators that Trump is lagging in the early vote with seniors in Pennsylvania. According to Politico, they say that is a warning sign. In Pennsylvania, where voters over the age of 65 have cast nearly half of the early ballots, registered Democrats account for about 58% of votes cast by seniors compared to 35% for Republicans. That's despite both parties having roughly equal numbers of registered voters aged 65 and older. Now, that partisan gap is narrower than it was in 2020. Okay, so Trump didn't lose the state of Pennsylvania by very much in 2020. So again, way too early to tell, based on any of the early voting, what the hell is going on. The only state where early voting really matters all that much is Nevada, and Trump is running stronger than expected in Nevada right now. Now, I do have to paint for you the worst case scenario for the country. Okay, so here's the worst case scenario for the country. The worst case scenario for the country is that the scenario that I laid out a few moments ago turns out to be the actual final scenario, that Trump wins Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Nevada. And he gets to 268, and then Kamala Harris gets to 270. There's one major problem with this. The major problem with this is that the Electoral College count right now is flawed, deeply flawed. If you go back to the 2020 census, what you will find is that the 2020 census radically overcounted citizens in blue states and radically undercounted citizens in red states. This is not speculation. The Census Bureau has acknowledged as much. The Census Bureau has now acknowledged that 14 states had significant miscounts in the 2020 census. Significant miscounts in the 2020 census. We are talking being like 5% off in terms of the population. So why exactly does that matter? Well, the reason that matters is because that is how you allocate both congressional seats and electoral college votes. The states that were undercounted were nearly all red states, and the states that were overcounted were nearly all blue states. And that was under the Trump administration. That was Wilbur Ross, who was the Commerce Secretary, who did a crap job. And then it turns out afterward, it's very hard to change the sort of result of the census. And the person who could change the results of the census is Gina Raimondo, who, of course, is a Democrat working for the Biden administration. The overcounted states are Hawaii, Delaware, Rhode Island, Minnesota, New York, and Massachusetts. Those are among the overcounted states. Okay, there are a few others. Those states all, again, went for Joe Biden. Undercounted states were Texas, Illinois, Florida, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Arkansas. Only one of those, Illinois, voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Now, again, the census is not an exact science. It's very difficult to count every single person. Some people don't answer the phone. Some people don't answer the door when you knock or whatever. But this makes a huge difference. Why? Because if the count had been properly done, the state of Florida would have had 2 more electoral college votes. The state of New York would have had 1 fewer electoral college vote. The state of Texas would have had 1 more electoral college vote. In all, somewhere between 7 and 9 electoral college votes would have gone to red states that are currently residing in blue states. Okay, that is just a fact. Okay, and because that is the case, wow. I mean, worst case scenario for the country is that. Worst case scenario for the country is Kamala Harris narrowly wins, and that then opens the door to this question being asked, because it is pretty clear at that point the electoral college count is wrong. I'm just painting a nightmare scenario for all y'all, which is why it's important that Trump needs to win. Not just because I think Trump should win, but for the sanguinity of the country. Trump really, really needs to win, which means he needs to win Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. Get out there and vote. If you are a Republican, if you are an independent who's voting for Trump, if you're a low propensity voter and you don't know whether you should vote, go and vote. Every single vote in Pennsylvania is going to count. Whatever doubts you have about President Trump, understand that Kamala Harris as president is much, much, much worse. Well, Democrats they're becoming desperate, and they are trotting out their last line of defense. The celebrities. Yes, it's celebrity time. Now, it's always been bewildering to me that Democrats really believe that celebrities are really going to move the needle in a major way in favor of their party. It has never worked in my lifetime. Barack Obama didn't need the celebrities. He was a celebrity. Hillary Clinton tried the celebrities and failed. Joe Biden really didn't have much by the way of sort of celebrity endorsements because that entire campaign was run from a basement. Well, now Kamala Harris is calling on all her friends from Hollywood to cut endorsements for her. So the members of the cast of The Avengers decided to cut a commercial that is indeed the weirdest commercial ever. They literally end this commercial, as you'll notice, by shouting "down with democracy" as they say that Kamala Harris should be the president, which is weird.
Hi, you guys. Hi, Avengers.
Hey, Scarlett.
Jumping on the call.
Whoa. I think you mean assembling. I said assembling. Don, that's pretty good. No, they thought it was funny.
Scarlett, it is our pleasure to come together and to get the vote out this election. Come on.
Yeah, how can we be of service?
Well, how about we start with what our voting plans are going to be, who we're going to bring to the polls with us, that sort of thing.
I think Kamala Harris needs a catchphrase.
Ooh, yes, definitely a catchphrase.
How about this? I'm just off the top of my head. I can do this all day.
Shut up.
I hate it.
Okay.
I mean, it's original, but...
What about something punchier like,
Ooh, boom. You looking for this?
Iron Man 2, everybody loved it.
Okay, again, I think we're just trying to get out the vote.
Kamala forever.
That's better.
Okay, how about I'm down with democracy? It's just clean, it's simple.
Okay, I like that.
It's hard to argue with that.
Kamala Harris down with democracy.
Oh, yeah. I'm Kamala Harris, and I say down with democracy.
I don't know if that sounds the way we want it to sound, though.
I think we just need, can we get some production, though?
Jarvis?
My name's not Jarvis, but whatever.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Down with democracy.
Down with democracy.
Is that what we mean, though?
Yeah, together we're gonna tear down democracy.
Will you stop playing heroic music under yourselves?
I'm Kamala Harris, and I am down with democracy. Did I sound enough like her?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. You gonna vote based on that? You gonna listen to Mark? I hate Jews Ruffalo? Those are the people who you're gonna go out with? All right, I suppose. Well, folks, if you thought that Avengers ad was for like a new Avengers movie, wrong. It's a scam to get you to vote for Kamala Harris. Speaking of scams, when Apple releases the new iPhone every year, the big carriers play the same old game. Sign your life away for the next 2 years and get a free iPhone. Don't fall for it. With Pure Talk, you can get great savings on the new iPhone 16, and you can still get an affordable data plan that fits your needs on America's most dependable 5G network. How would I know? Because I have the new iPhone 16 from Pure Talk. Bottom line, stop falling into the same traps and overpaying for data you're not going to use. With Pure Talk, for just $35 a month, get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data, plus mobile hotspot on America's most dependable 5G network. But wait, it gets even better. When you switch to Pure Talk on a qualifying plan, you'll get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus Insider. That means access to our full library of movies, series, and documentaries. Listen up, folks. Now you can get exclusive access to Matt Walsh's latest bombshell documentary, Am I Racist? Trust me, the left has been squirming about this one. That's not all. You're getting uncensored, ad-free daily shows, a full year of our kids' platform, Bentkey, and your very own Leftist Tears Tumblr. The only way you can get all that stuff is by going to puretalk.com/Shapiro or call and mention my name. Stop overpaying for your cell phone plan. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Switch to a qualifying plan. Get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus Insider. Also, folks, this is a pivotal moment in American history with next week's election. There are serious consequences electorally for things like Israel. Israel right now is fighting for its very survival, facing attacks from enemies on all sides who seek its destruction. Ordinary citizens just like you, like me, have left their families to defend their homeland. These brave men and women have been injured fighting for their country's survival. Their families need our help. That's precisely why I've partnered with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Right now, the fellowship is on the ground in Israel, providing real help, food, shelter, security to those who need it most. Just $45, less than the cost of a tank of gas, can help provide essential supplies to a soldier's family during this crisis. Here's what I need you to do right now. Go to benforthefellowship.org. That's benforthefellowship.org to make a gift today. In the face of these many threats, the fellowship's ongoing work providing security to Israelis has never been more important. Remember, benforthefellowship.org. There are tons of people in need over there. The fellowship is helping out. Head on over to benforthefellowship.org. Give generously. God bless. And thank you. benforthefellowship.org. Jennifer Lopez was also out campaigning. She apparently was incredibly offended as a Puerto Rican woman, very offended by Tony Hinchcliffe. See, before that, she was going to vote for Trump. But then afterward, she was really offended, and now she's going to vote for Kamala Harris. Oh, wait. Well, here she was at a rally for Kamala Harris. Woo, boy.
At Madison Square Garden, he reminded us who he really is and how he really feels. It wasn't just Puerto Ricans that were offended that day, okay? It was every Latino in this country. It was humanity and anyone of decent character.
Oh, humanity.
I am not here to trash anyone or bring them down. I know what that can feel like, and I wouldn't do it to my worst enemy, or even when facing the biggest adversary I think America has internally ever had. But over Kamala Harris's entire career, she has proven to us who she is.
So when I have questions about character, the first person I go to is a woman who dated Diddy. That is the very first person I go to. I think that her judgment is stellar on humans. Jennifer Lopez, just absolutely spot on, always and forever. Jimmy Kimmel, by the way, is now breaking the law, so that's exciting. Jimmy Kimmel is so excited for Kamala Harris that he's actually violating the law. And here he was the other night doing just that.
If you can vote early, vote early. If you can't vote early, vote on time. If you want to vote for Trump, vote late, vote very late. Do your voting on Thursday or maybe Friday.
Okay, so that's a joke. The problem is that the Department of Justice actually prosecuted a man named Douglas Mackey, you will recall, back in October of 2023 for this exact same joke. Mackey had a Twitter audience of 58,000 followers, and he had tweeted out and texted out some information suggesting that black voters should show up late for the election. Okay, the problem, and they prosecuted him. He went to jail. Jimmy Kimmel can do it, and apparently no problem at all. But the desperation is setting in for the Democratic Party. They're looking for a closing argument. They've tried the Tony Hinchcliffe argument. I don't think it's going to carry a lot of weight because, again, Tony Hinchcliffe is a roast comedian. That's literally what he does. So their latest attempt comes courtesy of President Trump himself. So President Trump was talking about Liz Cheney. He was out on the campaign trail with Tucker Carlson last night in Glendale, Arizona. And he started talking about Liz Cheney. And here is what he had to say.
And I don't blame him for sticking with his daughter, but his daughter is a very dumb individual, very dumb. She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face. You know, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy. But she's a stupid person. And I used to I'd have meetings with a lot of people, and she always wanted to go to war with people.
Okay, so you know full on what he's saying right there. Now, I actually don't like this argument. I think the chicken hawk argument was crap when it was trotted out against George W. Bush and all of his supporters back in the 2000s. I think it's crap now. I don't think that congressmen are sitting there and being like, well, it's not me, so I'm just going to send troops. Okay, the reality is that there are wide differences of opinion among people who have served in the military about foreign policy and people who have not served in the military about foreign policy. So I don't like the chicken hawk argument because I think it's specious, empty, and foolish. But that's not the rip on Trump. Okay, what they are ripping on Trump for saying is the part where he said, quote, let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her. They're claiming that he wants her assassinated. Okay, I'm sorry, that's just bullshit. It's not true. It's just not true. It's not real. Trump is not calling for the killing of Liz Cheney. He is clearly making the exact same argument the entire left made about the entire right during the period 2002 to 2008, in which they said, you guys are really sanguine about sending troops into harm's way, but very few of you have served in the military. And it would be totally different if you were on the front lines with barrels trained at you. Right? Michael Moore used to make this argument all the time. This is a Cindy Sheehan argument. This was a Code Pink argument. And I understand that some aspects of the Code Pink argument have been adopted by some parts of the right, but that doesn't mean that the argument is for assassination, but that's not how they're treating it. So Liz Cheney then put out a statement saying, this is how dictators destroy free nations. They threaten those who speak against them with death. We cannot entrust our country and our freedom to a petty, vindictive, cruel, unstable man who wants to be a tyrant. Okay, it's just bullshit. I'm sorry. Like, it's not my fault that you guys can't speak English or that you're being radically dishonest by taking President Trump out of context there to pretend that he's calling. The headline at Drudge today is Trump calls for Cheney's execution. That's not remotely true. It's just not true. World in shock. That's literally the headline over at Drudge today. Trump says Liz Cheney, this is from the Express. Trump says Liz Cheney should be shot in the face by 9 guns in sickening fantasy. Donald Trump has caused controversy by suggesting Liz Cheney should have guns trained on her face in an alarming firing squad fantasy. That's not what he said. It's not remotely what he said. And this is the stupidest game. And they're playing this game like full time. They're finding stuff that Trump says that is actually unobjectionable on its face. You can disagree with the argument, but the actual language is being skewed and twisted in order to achieve something that Trump never said. They're also doing this with another quote that he said the other day. So we're going to play the quote. Basically, they're claiming that Trump is now trying to force down his will on women. So here is President Trump talking about protecting women. Okay, they're making this into a national issue too.
And my people told me about 4 weeks ago, I was saying, no, I want to protect the people. I want to protect the women of our country. I want to protect the women. Sir, please don't say that. Why? They said, we think it's very inappropriate for you to say. I said, why? I'm president. I want to protect the women of our country. They said. They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say, pay these guys a lot of money. Can you believe it? I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to protect them.
Okay, so this has now been taken out of context to suggest that Trump is forcing himself on the women. So this is a desperation play. He's forcing himself. He literally says, I want to protect the women, whether that is a popular message with women or whether it is not a popular message with women. Now, you can argue with the political common sense of saying something like that from the podium. He is not arguing that he wants to do something to women against their will. He is saying, I'm saying I want to protect women. And if women like that message, so be it. If they don't like that message, so be it. But that is my message. He's specifically talking here about protecting women from the predations of illegal immigrant criminals. That was the context of what he's talking about right there. So what did the media do? What does Kamala Harris do? She plucks that right out of context, and then she suggests that Trump is trying to force himself on women again. It's basically like Trump is verbally raping people or some such nonsense. Here is Kamala Harris being ridiculous.
Listen, it actually is, I think, very offensive to women in terms of not understanding their agency, their authority, their right, and their ability to make decisions about their own lives, including their own bodies. And this is just the latest on a series of reveals by the former president of how he thinks about women and their agency. Whether he has said, as he has, that women should be punished for their choices, whether he has talked about his pride in taking away a fundamental right from women, whether it be how he has actually created a situation in America where now 1 in 3 women lives in a Trump abortion ban state and has legal restrictions on the right she rightly should have to make decisions about her own body.
Okay, you know how far afield you have to get there? You know how far you have to go to get there? So far. Okay, to get to Trump is trying to cram down things on women. That's what he means by this. No, that's clearly not what he meant by that, and you are lying. Well, the desperate party is indeed lying, but I'll tell you what's not a lie. If you missed out on your taxes, if, say, you're late on your taxes or you didn't pay them, well, the October 15th deadline has now passed. Are you prepared for what's coming? If you owe back taxes, if your tax returns are still unfiled, if you missed that deadline to file for an extension, well, now that October 15th is behind us, the IRS could be ramping up enforcement. Let me tell you, they do not play around. You could face wage garnishments, frozen bank accounts, even property seizures if you haven't yet taken action. But here is the good news. There's still hope. Tax Network USA has been in this game for years. They know exactly how to navigate the complex world of tax law. They've helped taxpayers save over $1 billion in tax debt. They've filed over 10,000 tax returns. That's billion with a B, folks. They specialize in helping hardworking Americans like you reduce their tax burden. So don't let the IRS catch you off guard and get ahead of this right now with Tax Network USA. They're a team of professionals who work tirelessly to protect your assets and find the best solution for your unique situation. Here's what you need to do. For a complimentary consultation, call today 1-800-958-1000 or visit their website at tnusa.com/Shapiro. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Shapiro today. Do not let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. Also, let's talk about something important, your health. Now, the left loves to push their woke agenda on everything, including men's health products, believe it or not. But here's the thing. We don't need supplements designed by the soy boys who think masculinity is toxic and that Doug Emhoff is a real man. We need products made for real men by real dudes. That's where Responsible Man comes in. Responsible Man created the Emerson multivitamin, not for wimps or woke bros, but for men of honor who take their duties seriously. Right now, you can take advantage of Responsible Man's early access Black Friday sale and get 60% off your order with my special discount. Visit responsibleman.com. Use my code Shapiro to secure this offer. Let's be clear, this isn't just about saving money. It's about investing in yourself. The Emerson multivitamin is packed with 33 key ingredients that support your immune system, sharpen your brain, and keep your heart and muscles strong. It's everything a conservative man needs to fight the good fight against the radical left. Here's the kicker. It's made right here in America. No Chinese knockoffs, no outsourcing to countries that hate us, just good old American quality. Visit responsibleman.com. Use my code Shapiro to get 60% off your order. This is their best deal of the year. Remember, a strong America needs strong men, and strong men start with Responsible Man vitamins. That's responsibleman.com, code Shapiro, responsibleman.com. Be the man America needs. But it's also very clear what Democrats are doing, right? Democrats are relying extraordinarily heavily on the white female vote. That is what this entire election is about for Democrats. If they can get enough white ladies out to vote, single white ladies mostly, then they believe they'll win the election. If they can't, they'll lose. Because they are afraid they're not going to get the sort of minority turnout that they got under Barack Obama. It'll look more like Biden 2020 or even Hillary 2016. And that means you really need to pump up that white female vote. It's not me saying that. That's the New York Times. Quote, armed with a clipboard and campaign literature, Liz Minnella strolled through a neighborhood in New Hope, Pennsylvania, optimistic that by the end of the day, her door knocking, the small town would live up to its name for Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign. There wasn't a political yard sign in sight, which Miss Minnella, who had only recently become a Democratic activist, took to mean she might find some persuadable voters. When a blonde woman in a Villanova sweatshirt answered one door with a broad smile, Miss Minnella, a Villanova graduate, thought aloud, "This is my lady." The woman, a 52-year-old Republican, was eager to talk, even though Miss Minnella's voter list had highlighted her daughter, an independent. Miss Minnella tried to steer the conversation toward reproductive rights, but eventually it circled back to the women's fears that migrants would bring violent crime to her wealthy Philadelphia suburb. The woman thanked Miss Minnella for civil conversation, but her mind was unchanged. She would be voting for former President Donald Trump. The episode reflected the obstacles white women who support Ms. Harris are confronting as they try to persuade their ideological diverse counterparts to join her cause, an effort that could potentially decide the election. White women are the country's largest voting demographic, making up about 30% of the electorate, and they consistently turn out at very high rates. They tend to swing in larger numbers toward the Republican in presidential elections, including in the last two contests for Donald Trump. So she's trying to reach out to white women. The problem is that Kamala Harris and her campaign really tend to think of women in a bizarre way, particularly in how women think about men. Truly, it's strange. Here, there's a fair bit of evidence for this. So first of all, there is this kind of undercurrent in much of the Democratic campaign literature and much of what they're saying that women and men are sort of weirdly enemies, which is not true and should not be true. And no functioning society can survive on that basis. Men and women are not enemies. Men and women are counterparts. That is the basis for all human reproduction and rearing of children. A society in which men and women are enemies is a society doomed for destruction. It seems fairly commonsensical. There's nothing particularly controversial about that, but the way that Democrats perceive women is that they are victims of the patriarchy, that men are constantly attempting to make women subservient. This is how they talk about women. Now, I don't think most women in America perceive men that way. I really don't. I think maybe there's a subset of women who perceive men that way, and if so, either they're wrong or they've had bad experiences with bad men, which I get. You have bad experiences with a person, you tend to generalize that experience, very human response. But the reality is that most women kind of like men, and most men kind of like women. Again, the fact that any of this is remotely controversial is beyond me. But that's not how Democrats think about it. So yesterday, Mark Cuban, who has, I would say, been a pretty tremendously awful surrogate for the Kamala Harris campaign, he was appearing on The View with a bunch of women who I will say are not particularly intelligent. Okay, this is not a place you go if you're looking for IQ points. These folks ain't solving Rubik's Cubes over there. And Mark Cuban shows up and he says, the problem with Trump is he doesn't want to be around smart, intelligent women. Here we go, just demeaning every woman who would associate with Trump or vote for Trump, basically.
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women, ever. It's just that simple. They're intimidating to him.
You never see him around strong, intelligent women, which is weird because his administration was staffed with them. Nikki Haley, who then ran against him, was his UN ambassador. Today, his campaign manager is Susie Wiles. Many of his campaign surrogates are women. His press secretary, Kellyanne Conway, was a woman. It turns out that he's constantly surrounded by intelligent and strong women. I mean, look at the campaign. I've dealt with the campaign many times. Many of the people I've dealt with are female. It's a ridiculous statement. And of course, it was taken as ridiculous by many of the Republican women who are part of the Trump campaign. Representative Elise Stefanik from New York. She called on Cuban to apologize, of course.
Just one day after Joe Biden smeared 250 million Americans as garbage, now Mark Cuban, Kamala Harris's top ally, says no strong and intelligent women support Trump. It's a disgrace, and Kamala Harris stays silent. She must be defeated in 5 days to save America. I'm proud to be the highest ranking woman in the United States Congress. When I ran, I was the youngest woman ever elected. I'm the most senior woman on the House Armed Services Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, and I proudly am voting and endorse President Trump. Save America in 5 days. Vote Trump.
Okay, again, not uncommon. Lots of women are going to vote for Donald Trump. But there is this prevailing opinion among Democrats that women who vote for Trump are being intimidated into it by the men around them. That is the message of this ad that has now made all sorts of waves, this Julia Roberts produced ad about women voting. So, again, this ad has become subject of 1,000 think pieces at this point. The ad was produced by Vote Common Good, a nonprofit organization aimed at mobilizing religious voters. Now, the problem is, I'm not sure the people who produced this ad have ever met a religious voter. Truly. Because what they seem to think is that men and women who are religious, if they're married, basically the woman is a handmaid's tale victim of the man. She could never just have an open conversation about politics with her husband. She might not agree with her husband about politics all the time, but she would never say so. And by the way, the core assumption here, which is that tons and tons of married women actually are secretly being cudgeled into their political opinions by their maybe they agree with their husbands, or maybe their husbands agree with them. As it turns out, married couples tend to vote alike. You know why? Because they tend to share everything else too. My wife and I, we vote party line, Shapiro party line, meaning we vote exactly the same way on everything. Want to know why? because we share a set of values. We had to decide on those values when we decided to build our home and raise our kids. And so it should not be a shock that our values quite identically reflect one another. That's why we have such a solid marriage. A solid marriage is predicated on the grounding of similar values. Those will manifest in voting. But again, the basic idea for Democrats very often is that women and men are at odds. And that means that basically women in religious households are being shoved into closets like the Taliban. Well, not quite like the Taliban, because the Democrats like the Taliban enough to have handed an entire country over to them, but kind of like the Taliban. And that basically a woman escapes the home, she winks at the other subservient Handmaid's Tale women, and then they vote for Kamala Harris. This is just a fantasy. This is not how male-female relations work, particularly within marriage.
Your turn, honey.
In the one place in America where women still have a right to choose, you can vote any way you want. And no one will ever know.
Did you make the right choice?
Sure did, honey.
Remember, what happens in the booth stays in the booth. Vote Harris Walls.
A female solidarity in our crap marriages where we can't have conversations with our husbands. It's so trite. It's such a trite misunderstanding of how male-female relations work. Now, again, I'm sure there are many couples that vote differently, and that's fine. But again, the underlying idea here is that the husband is going to, if he finds out she voted for Kamala, he's going to go home and beat the shit out of her or something. Like that. That's the underlying message of that ad. And in fact, this is something the Democrats have actively been attempting to push. I saw some tweets the other day from members of the Democratic Get Out the Vote structure saying that they had trained their Get Out the Vote specialists, the door knockers, that if they were talking to a woman and the husband came to the door, they were to quietly leave because they didn't want to actually have the woman be victimized by her husband in an incident of domestic violence. This is not how male-female relationships work. And by the way, if you think this is how male-female relationships work, you are contributing to the downfall of Western civilization, truthfully. If you think that males and females are constantly at odds, and the only reason a wife and a husband might vote similarly is not because they share values and a life that they've built together, but because the male is bullying the woman, so the woman has to secretly, quietly form a solidarity committee among the Stepford wives and then rebel against the evil patriarchal husbands. It's really kind of sad, honestly. Really kind of sad. It's not just that Democrats don't understand a lot of women. They also don't understand men. So, for example, Sarah Haynes over on The View, again, repository of much human stupidity. She was very upset that President Trump had gotten in a garbage truck and driven it around, which was a hilarious campaign stunt after Joe Biden called all of Trump's supporters garbage, which is in fact what happened. We'll get to that in a moment. Sarah Haynes, she says, it's just sad that Trump is appealing to men by being in a garbage truck.
I think it's really sad that he's appealing to the working man, like the blue collar worker. With the garbage truck, I know that was about garbage, but it was also he wants to look like he can rub elbows at a McDonald's and he does all these things. The people that will be hurt the most, while he was a president, he reduced by millions the number of workers, and this is blue collar workers who would become eligible for overtime pay. In 2025, it goes even further. And he wants to take away what 40 hours after 40 hours would normally earn you time and a half. He wants to take that away from workers. The reason Elon Musk is with him is someone like Elon Musk benefits from him. Of course. It is the working people that are falling for that, not all, but the blue-collar working man is the one falling for this.
Okay, who do you think respects garbage men more, Donald Trump or Sarah Haynes? Okay, the reason that men resonate to this is because they know that Donald Trump doesn't hate them and think of garbage men as people doing a ridiculous job that's for dullards and all this kind of thing. And by the way, the idea that Donald Trump is attempting to harm the working man. Wages went up under Donald Trump, inflation adjusted. They were stagnated under Joe Biden. It's that simple. But, of course, again, Democrats do not understand men, which is presumably why the irrepressibly stupid Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, the queen of moral vacuity, has now suggested that Doug Emhoff is a great example of masculinity. Man, oh man.
We've had a lot of poor examples, I think, of masculinity and men. But Doug really is the contrast of that. He knows that by lifting up women, he's also lifting up himself and the men around him.
So if Doug Emhoff is what Democratic women think is what a good man looks like, I can understand why maybe they're at odds with men if that's what they think. If they think Doug Emhoff is like the best that masculinity has to offer, I can see why they think that women might be like afraid of their boyfriends who allegedly beat the shit out of them. Or that they might be, disquieted with their husbands who might be stooping the nanny, impregnating her, and possibly paying for her abortion. I can see why they might be anti-male if the people they surround themselves with are, like Doug Emhoff. All right, in just a moment, we'll talk about a giant lie that is being told by the Biden White House. First, gentlemen, it's time to take a stand against the tide of mediocrity. Behold, the Precision 5 from Jeremy's Razors. Not just a damn good razor, it's a declaration of independence. 5 meticulously crafted blades deliver a buttery smooth shave as bold as your convictions. Reclaim your masculinity, not like Doug Emhoff. Show the world you won't be dulled by conformity. Stop giving your money to the woke corporations that hate you. Choose the Precision 5. Order now at jeremysrazors.com or find us on walmart.com and Amazon Prime. Also, by now you've definitely heard Am I Racist?, our box office hit, and the top documentary of the decade is streaming exclusively at Daily Wire Plus. We know you want to watch it, and Daily Wire Plus is the only place you can. Right now, it's easy. Get 47% off a new membership with code FIGHT. That gets you access to Am I Racist?, the movie that shocked the box office, stunned the left, and tore apart DEI. You want to know how Matt Walsh pulled it off? He breaks it all down with exclusive bonus content, taking you behind the scenes on how the greatest troll against the left in history was done. Plus, there's a deleted Johnny the Walrus scene Matt did not show in theaters. The only way to see it all? Daily Wire Plus. So get 47% off right now at dailywire.com/subscribe with code FIGHT. Well, speaking of the White House and radical dishonesty, it turns out that Joe Biden changed the White House transcript. The White House changed the White House transcript, this would be about the garbage comment, to include an apostrophe that clearly was not there. According to the Associated Press, White House press officials altered the official transcript of a call in which President Joe Biden appeared to take a swipe at supporters of Donald Trump, drawing objections from the federal workers who document such remarks for posterity, according to two U.S. government officials and an internal email obtained Thursday by the Associated Press. Biden created an uproar earlier this week when he suggested that Trump supporters were garbage. The transcript released by the White House press office, however, rendered the quote with an apostrophe, reading supporters with an apostrophe before the S, rather than supporters without the apostrophe, which aides said pointed to Biden criticizing Hinchcliffe. The change was made after the press office conferred with the president, according to an internal email from the head of the stenographer's office that was obtained by the AP. So that's illegal. You're not allowed to go back and actually change what the White House stenographer wrote in order to help yourself. But that's precisely what the Biden White House did. Because here's the thing. The Biden White House, the rest of the Democratic Party, Biden said the thing. It's called a Kinsey gaffe, okay, where you actually say the thing that you mean and call it a gaffe. He said the thing. Okay, the thing is that people on the left truly believe that Trump supporters are fascists and Nazis and garbage, which is why none of this, it all rings hollow when they talk about unity. So this is Kamala's closing pitch. Her closing pitch is that she's a moderate seeking unity, and no one believes this. Here she was, for example, yesterday talking about moving forward and the importance of moving forward as opposed to backward, which is backwards from the forward, which would just be standing where you are. So you got to move forward, not three-word, forward.
You know what? Let me say something about this. We're here because we're fighting for a democracy. And understand the difference here. Understand the difference here. Moving forward. Moving forward. Understand the difference here. What we are looking at is a difference in this election. Let's move forward and see where we are.
Okay, moving forward, guys. Moving forward. Also, she's about bringing people together. Did you know that? Very much about bringing people together. Here she was talking about it yesterday.
I do believe that this is a choice about two very different directions for our country. And the choice being offered by Donald Trump is about going backward, about a constant emphasis on degrading the American people and our capacity, versus a track that is about bringing the country together.
She is going to bring the country together. Also, apparently, according to her weird and kooky running mate, Tim Walz, Joe Biden was very clear that he only meant that one Trump supporter was garbage.
Did the president's garbage comments that he made, did it damage this campaign?
No, he clarified what he was saying. He was very clear about that. What mattered last night was the vice president's positive vision of going to America, to all Americans, being a president for all Americans, and that's where we're at. So, no, certainly not.
That's not what he said? Well, I mean, he sort of did. President Trump, for his part, is like, Kamala keeps talking about unity, but I noticed they call me a fascist a lot.
She talks about unity. Oh, unity, unity. Oh, yeah, unity. By the way, he's like Hitler. He reminds me of Hitler. He's a fascist. She's talking about we're going to have unity, and then she calls me a fascist in the next sentence. This is the worst unifier.
Hey, he is right about that, of course. See, here's the thing. The actual Kamala Harris closing ad was pretty much cut by a group called Seed the Vote. Okay, SEED, Seed the Vote. Okay, they cut this ad using AI, and this is supposed to be a warning from the future if you vote for Donald Trump. This is what the Democrats actually think about Republicans. Okay, this is the quiet part out loud. It is also one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life. Here we go.
We weren't always like this.
It's people sitting in
we had
garbage,
a beautiful life. The best parties. The most beautiful friends.
Yeah, they're at a rave, by the way.
We thought it was just another election. So a lot of us didn't vote. Why bother? Everyone knew the system was rigged. Many of us even voted for them. I know it sounds crazy.
It's AI Elon Musk, who does not look like
we didn't like Democrats back then. We were angry about the vaccine mandates and how they handled the war in Gaza and the way they wanted to censor free speech on the internet.
They want unquestioned obedience.
So what did we end up doing? We voted for the guys who openly said they wanted to imprison dissenters and use the military against their political opponents.
Guys, get ready. Here it comes. It's going to get real weird now.
So yeah, you were wrong on that. Big time. When Trump got sick and died, Vance was 39 years old when he became president. 30 years later, he's still president today. And with the Supreme Court on his side, they gave him dictatorial powers. They took away women's reproductive rights,
with Russian language in background,
and removed the minimum.
Outlawed contraception.
Then we had repression of dissent, AI surveillance of everything we did or said on a level we couldn't imagine. The government under Vance, Peter Thiel, and Elon Musk set up concentration camps for illegal immigrants, then legal immigrants, then even homeless people.
Oh my God, these homeless people. Wow.
They finally admitted climate change was real,
psychotic.
But it was too late. Florida sank into the Gulf, and the West burned.
The entire state of Florida.
And cities across the country.
The entire West
became uninsurable, then uninhabitable. Musk and Thiel
across the country, like
all
Iowa,
resources into artificial intelligence, so they and their friends could become immortal.
Immortal?
I don't know what happened to them, but I know what happened to us.
People sitting around like a campfire outside of Chicago. That is the best commercial I've ever seen. By which I mean that is horrifying. That is it. Okay, so if that's your closing pitch, that Donald Trump is going to die, and then J.D. Vance, who apparently is bearded Hitler, is going to take over and promptly, with Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, imprison all dissenters, make themselves immortal, allow the entire state of Florida to sink under the Gulf. By the way, that's not how climate change works, my friends. It's incremental. It happens over a long period of time, and you can build these things called seawalls. All of New Orleans is below sea level. Yes, this is their final pitch. And then you wonder why people aren't buying it. Maybe people aren't buying it because you're being crazy. You need to take your clonazepam. What is wrong with you people? Stop it. Just stop it. You're being stupid and crazy. That's why. All you had to do was be not stupid and crazy, and you couldn't stop yourselves. You were stupid and crazy. Yeah, good luck with that final pitch. So back in the real world, it turns out that you want to know something that people don't like? A bad economy. They don't like a bad economy. Well, the final jobs report before the election is out, and it shows just 12,000 jobs added. So that's not great, Bob. They fell short 100,000 jobs, and that's if they don't revise it down into an actual job loss. So again, well done, Kamalanomics. But don't worry, she pledges she's going to fix everything. Here she was yesterday saying that day one she would bring down the cost of living. which would make it different from all the other days she's been in office where she, increased the cost of living.
Day one, what's your first executive action?
Well, my first priority, which will be probably the package of bills, is about bringing down the cost of living. So it's about housing. It's about childcare. It's about what we need to do to deal with grocery prices. So it's not one, but it's a package that is with one singular purpose, bringing down the cost of living.
Do you believe her? Do you believe she's going to bring down the cost of living? If so, how? She also says she's very concerned about the challenges that face the ordinary American family, by which she can't define family, she can't define ordinary American, she can't define man, she can't define woman. All they had to do was be not crazy, but they can't do it.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night are the challenges that face the American family and my role and responsibility in my to-do list to address those issues, whether it be on bringing down the cost of groceries, bringing down the cost of housing, what we need to do to make sure childcare is affordable for working families, what I will do to make sure that Medicare covers in-home care for seniors. Those are the things that keep me up, which is doing the work that will directly impact the people of America.
By the way, her plan is for everybody to work for the government effectively, because that is the only job gain we saw last month. As it turns out, there was a net job loss in private payrolls. Private payrolls dropped by 28,000 last month. It was only the government that hired up. Otherwise, it would have been a net job loss last month. Meanwhile, remember that video a second ago where apparently J.D. Vance is super duper duper evil? Like truly evil. He wants to silence dissent. It's very hard to make that case when you watch J.D. Vance on the trail. It really is. J.D. is super smart, and he's quite personable, and he's very good with humans. He was with Joe Rogan yesterday, and honestly, he did great. I mean, like, he's really good at this. So here was J.D. Vance talking about the Democratic leadership silencing people.
What's happened in the modern Democratic Party, at least at the leadership level, is they've gotten really comfortable with the idea of silencing people who disagree with them, such to the point where, like, it's not even that Tim Walz thinks that hate speech should be censored. It's that the governor of a state could utter that phrase without recognizing how fundamentally subjective it is. Right? Or Hillary Clinton saying that we want to censor misinformation. She has come out and explicitly said that we have to censor disinformation and misinformation.
Or we lose total control.
Or we
like, hey, you're not supposed to have total control over discourse.
That's the whole point. Is we don't want people to have total control. And they can utter it without the American media going completely bananas. Just suggests there's something broken about the political culture of the left.
You know, that guy totally seems like he's going to be a 30-year dictator. Just slap a white beard on him and go into the future, and it turns out all of Florida is underwater. These people. But here's the thing. In real time, they're ruining things. Okay. The DEI that has been embraced by the entire left has wrecked companies. Boeing yesterday had to announce that they are dismantling their diversity department, like completely dismantling it, their global diversity, equity, and inclusion department. Why? Because they found out that it was a giant fail. They figured out that it was actually really bad for business, that it caused people to hire the wrong people, that it created massive regulatory problems with the business. Okay. These are all the principles of democratic politics brought to the fore. The same thing holds true, by the way, with regard to the anti-Semitism that the Democratic Party has refused to quash in its midst. Maybe the most shocking undercovered story of the day comes courtesy of the Washington Free Beacon, which does amazing reporting. You remember, earlier this year, Columbia University's president, Minouche Shafik, she had to testify before Congress. She had made a fool of herself by allowing Columbia to be taken over by the Tentifadas, by the pro-Hamasniks. Well, now, apparently it has come out that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who proclaims that he is, obviously because he's Jewish, it means he's pro-Israel and pro-Jew and everything. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer quietly advised Columbia University's leaders to, quote, keep heads down and ignore congressional criticism of the school's handling of campus anti-Semitism. He told former university president Minouche Shafik that the school's political problems are really only among Republicans, according to a new House Committee on Education and Workforce report. So again, instead of worrying about actual anti-Semitism at Columbia University, which was quite real since people were being threatened, there were entire spaces that were blocked to Jews. Instead of that, Chuck Schumer literally wrote to her and said, keep your head down. The only people worried about anti-Semitism are Republicans. I'm telling you, Jews who are thinking about voting for the Democratic Party, man, just understand who you're voting for. Truly, understand who you're voting for. Egregious stuff. Speaking of which, it only took like a week for officials to announce that it was a hate crime and terrorism when an illegal immigrant shouting Allahu Akbar shot a Jewish man in West Rogers Park. Remember, there were no tweets from Kamala Harris over this. There are no tweets from Joe Biden over this. None. Zero. Zip. Zilch. Because one type of hatred is considered, kind of intersectional on the American left. All right, guys, coming up, we'll be joined by Andrew Klavan. He's going to tell us his take on the election. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro. Check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.
So many people, of course, have pointed out, and it is true, it's a major plot hole that, well, why did they just ride the bird to Mordor? It could have been 30 minutes total.
Well, folks, my friend and colleague Matt Walsh has another hot take about the movies. Apparently, he is not happy with Lord of the Rings.
And I like those movies, by the way. But
okay, I can't listen to any more of this. This is ridiculous. So today, we are going to go through Matt Walsh's critique here. We're going to tear it apart piece by piece. This video is sponsored by our friends over at Birch Gold. So I'll be honest with you, I have not read all the books. I know, it's a shocker because I've read so many books, but I grew up on the movies. The movies are, to my mind, perhaps the greatest film achievement of the 21st century. I watched them multiple times in the theaters. I did own all of the Blu-ray DVDs that Matt is talking about. I've seen all of the extended editions. I've seen the behind-the-scenes components. I've seen all of the little comic relief areas on the DVDs. The funniest one is Elijah Wood being pranked by the other hobbits by being told that he's part of a German interview. That one's fantastic.
When will you wear wigs?
There's so much good stuff, Lord of the Rings related. And so I take personal offense to what Matt Walsh is doing right here.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
Well, when we do a take on something, we go as deep as humanly possible. So I wanted to bring on the actual experts. First, we have on an expert on the literary dimension of Lord of the Rings, direct from a hobbit hole. That man is Dr. Malcolm Guite from Cambridge University. Malcolm Guite, welcome to the show. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you. I'll talk about talking to anyone. I'm an enthusiast.
I would have been able to tell that even if you had not told me. I know that Matt wasn't actually critiquing the books, he was critiquing the movies. And so we had on a movie expert as well, critical drinker. Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, except I can't deal with the fact that there's a person who works for our company who has such stupid thoughts about Lord of the Rings.
I mean, Matt seems like a nice guy, but man, he has some bad takes on media, and I think this is up there with the worst of them.
the theatrical release of Return of the King was about 3.5 hours. It was about what The Brutalist is. And then there are all these extended cuts that are 4.5 hours long, which is just obscene. That's offensive. I'm offended. If I pick up the Blu-ray, not that I watch Blu-ray anymore, but and it says 4.5 hours long, I'm offended by that.
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
I've never held with that complaint about any movie. It should be as long as the plot dictates. And in this case, there is an awful lot of plot to get through, so these movies deserve to be as long as they are. In fact, the theatrical cuts aren't even long enough. It's the extended cuts that you really want for the proper experience.
Oh no, like the first one where you're just going around Hobbiton, I love that long. Like I could have watched the whole movie of that. So no, they do get a bit longer as he goes along. I don't think the movies are too long. I mean, I could have done with more. Tom Bombadil is a whole other subject.
The entire series of Lord of the Rings is over 1,000 pages. I mean, it is a very, very long book. The movie doesn't even cover everything that's in the book, and it's still long, and it moves quickly. I mean, it's one of those movies where you finish Fellowship, and you're surprised that it's over already.
Oh my God. That's the whole thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think part of the issue is that it's a fantasy novel, or, it's based on a fantasy novel. And, fantasy stories stand or fall based on the world that they create. It's got to be a living, breathing, believable world that's got depth to it. And that's the thing that the Lord of the Rings movies do so well. It really gets you invested in this world, and it helps you to understand that what you're seeing is just one small story in a much grander saga that's been going on for thousands of years. There is so much history there. There is so many different cultures, so much that's going on outside the scope of this narrative. It conveys all of that, and I think that's what allows people to get so immersed into these movies so effectively. And of course, it takes a lot of time to do that.
I'm afraid I've made a great mistake in making my sequel too long and complicated and too slow in coming out. It is a curse having the epic temperament in an overcrowded age devoted to snappy bits.
A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.
Listen, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. Smart investors prepare ahead of time for that uncertainty. Just like keeping a life jacket handy before you set sail. That's why a lot of people are adding gold to their portfolios, leading to record gold prices in early 2025. Now, there's still a great opportunity for you to diversify and strengthen your financial future amid the market volatility. When it comes to diversifying into physical gold, I personally trust Birch Gold. They're the people I turn to for my own gold investments. Their specialty is helping you convert your existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA backed by physical gold without any out-of-pocket costs. One 5-star review says it perfectly. Knowledgeable, helpful, non-pressure. Well, those are the reasons why I've stood behind Birch Gold for years. They deliver what they promise. And I tell you that when you call them up, you should actually ask all of your questions. Get informed answers. And then once you feel comfortable, then think about diversifying into precious metals. Get your free info kit on gold by texting the word BEN to the number 989898. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, text BEN to 989898. Let the experts at Birch Gold help you secure your future today. With gold in uncertain times, precious metals, always a good investment. Go check them out right now. Text BEN to 989898.
The movie really ends with Frodo and Sam. They're stranded on the rock, and the lava's all around, and then the bird comes and picks them up. And so many people, of course, have pointed out, and it is true, it's a major plot hole that, well, why didn't they just ride the bird to Mordor?
Fool of a took. Throw yourself in next time and rid us of your stupidity.
The eagles are a dangerous machine. I have used them sparingly, and that is the absolute limit of their credibility and usefulness. The alighting of a great eagle of the misty mountains is absurd. It also makes the later capture of Gandalf by Saruman incredible, and spoils the account of his escape.
And what he's doing is he's exploring the way a thing could be done well, and the way the same thing could be abused. The way a person could flourish, or the way a person could be corrupted in themselves.
Take it, Gandalf. Take it.
No, Frodo.
You must take it.
You cannot offer me this ring.
I'm giving it to you.
Don't tempt me, Frodo.
So if you think about it, how do you be the kind advising wizard who actually has more power than the people he's advising, but doesn't want to exploit them? Well, Gandalf is an example of that. But Saruman is the counter-example, and you kind of know that Gandalf could degrade into Saruman if he's not careful. There are various points where Gandalf could have had the ring, and he says, no, you know.
I would use this ring from a desire to do good. But through me, it would wield a power too great and terrible to imagine.
Would Zimmerman think that he had improved the effect of a film of, say, The Ascent of Everest by introducing helicopters to take the climbers halfway up in defiance of probability? It would be far better to cut the snowstorm and the wolves than to make a farce of the arduous journey.
If you watch the behind the scenes stuff, shooting, especially Fellowship, it was miserable. Like, they were slogging through snow, rain, mud, but it creates this beautiful, believable world. Again, it gets you immersed in it. If it was done now, it would be done like on a soundstage at Marvel, and they'd have a volume screen around them. And, it would just be such a flat, uninteresting, uninvolving experience.
You could have cut the whole thing with the ghost soldiers, and that would have saved you 40 minutes or so, probably. And then you lose this massive plot hole, which is that the ghost soldiers show up and they just go through, they're like swarming army ants. and they easily kill everybody. They kill all the bad guys and the battle's over. And they're able to easily kill everyone because they're already dead. They're invincible.
The only thing I'll side with them on, to some extent, is the Army of the Dead in Return of the King was a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina. In the books, they're not as involved, and a lot of the things that they do kind of happen off screen. They do kind of come in and save the day a little bit, and it oversimplifies the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, sadly, but it's what you have to do. Otherwise, the movie would be like 10 hours long.
And then at the end of that, Aragorn is like, oh, you've proven yourself in battle, ghost soldiers. Be free now. How do they prove themselves? It required no courage for them to fight that battle. They were already dead, and they're hanging out in a cave somewhere for eternity.
They believe in nothing. They answer to no one. They will answer to the King of Gondor.
So, this analysis is really useful, but I need more dunking on Matt. So you said you've seen a lot of Matt's hot takes. On the list of hot takes, where does this hot take fall?
This has got to be up there. I mean, if you're going to make fun of any movie trilogy and be a detractor for it, the worst target you can possibly pick is The Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's like universally beloved.
What are people missing if they've only seen the films, which are really terrific?
Okay, I think the films are great. So first thing you'd be missing is the language itself. But the second thing you'd be missing, which is much more important in a way, is your own imagination, your internal imagery. Great as Peter Jackson is, he's giving you his personal Peter Jackson director's cut. But your internal imagining of that book might be even better than Jackson. And even if it isn't, it's yours. I think, when you imagine your Gandalf or your Elrond, or much, much more importantly, not only your Sam, but your Frodo, but also the darker characters, your idea of who Saruman is, or even Sauron himself. What you're doing is you're drawing on deeper images from inside yourself about good or evil, about a true path or a false one. And in a sense, it's much better to draw them up from within than to have them projected from without.
You're always going to get a richer experience from reading the books, and I think I would always advocate for people to read more anyway, so I think you get a much deeper story from the books, so I think that is better, but I think these are the best movie adaptations that you could probably hope for.
All I can say, if you haven't read it all, is lucky you have a great pleasure in store whenever that rich and golden time arrives when you can get really absorbed in it.
Well, I think it's apparent that Matt couldn't be any more wrong, but I'm sure Matt will have a fresh, terrible movie take next month, and we'll have to do this all over again. And I know many of you are wondering when I'm going to just take apart Matt's awful take on The Dark Knight. The answer is soon. It's coming. So breaking news, President Trump, there's another assassination attempt again this afternoon. This happened apparently over at his Florida golf course. This happened a little bit earlier, Sunday afternoon, sometime before the 2 p.m. Eastern hour. Apparently, Trump is fine. Trump is in good spirits. According to Senator Lindsey Graham, he released an email saying that he is safe and well. Quote, there were gunshots in my vicinity, but before rumors start spiraling out of control, I want you to hear this first. I am safe and well. According to the email, nothing will slow me down. I will never surrender. I always love you for supporting me. Apparently, a suspect, this is according to CNN, who authorities believe is connected to Sunday's incident at Trump International Golf Course, has been taken into custody at this point. A vehicle was stopped. A section of the Interstate 95 near State Route 714 in Martin County is shut down. Apparently, the allegation was that somebody actually climbed over the wall at the golf club, and a long gun was recovered at the scene. Secret Service apparently did return fire. The Secret Service said it was working with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office to investigate a protective incident involving former President Donald Trump. Again, the campaign has said that he is safe. So that's all we know at this point. We don't know the identity of the shooter. We don't know exactly what gun was used. We don't know anything like that. There are a lot of rumors floating around, and until all of that is confirmed, I really don't want to actually say what it was that happened. The one thing that we do know, apparently, is that the shooter was targeting President Trump. This makes the second assassination attempt against the former president of the United States and Republican nominee for president in about 8 weeks, which is insane. obviously. This is unprecedented in modern American history. This many attempts on a candidate for higher office this close together. And that does say something about the environment in which we now live. First of all, it says, does anyone even remember the first assassination attempt? I mean, those of us who are on the right do, because it's become sort of an iconic video and photo. President Trump nearly being hit in the head by a bullet, somebody behind him being killed, him getting up and shaking his fist and saying, fight. That became an iconic photo of President Trump. But it's been largely memory hold by the media. In the debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, it was not even mentioned once by the moderators anytime in that debate. It's basically been treated as though it never happened. Now, we all know that if somebody had attempted to shoot Joe Biden in the head, that would have been not only the biggest story in America that day, but for all the other days, because January 6th has now lasted for 4 long years. If somebody had actually come within millimeters of killing President Biden, then presumably that would have been the biggest story in America for months on end. It would have deeply and dramatically shaped the 2024 election. The same thing holds true if, God forbid, somebody had attempted to shoot, say, Kamala Harris. This would be the second time in 8 weeks that somebody tried to shoot Donald Trump. And again, this will be buried by Wednesday. How long do you think this story is actually going to last? Now, they say we still don't know the motive of the original shooter. It seems to me the motive was pretty clear, that he wanted to shoot Donald Trump in the head. But there's all sorts of mysterious circumstances surrounding the original shooter. Who was he? We know his identity. We don't know much about his motive. He apparently had encrypted phones and all the rest. It's all very mysterious and all very weird. We don't know anything about this shooter as of yet. We do know that there were foreign sources attempting to create the conditions for the assassination of President Trump, particularly Iran. There are open reports by the FBI and the CIA that the Iranians were attempting to facilitate the murder of President Trump. So it wouldn't be a total tremendous shock if it turns out that somebody had taken them up on that offer. Again, this is all speculative. There's no way to know at this point. The one thing that we do know, again, is that if the situation were reversed, it would be the center of the news for the foreseeable future. Why? Because the entire narrative would be that the right had polarized American politics to the extent that it was now considered within the norm to take a shot at a president of the United States or a presidential candidate from the other party. So the shoe is on the other foot now. How is it that the entire Democratic Party can center on the idea that Donald Trump is Orange Hitler, that he's the worst person who has ever lived, he's the worst person in the universe, a danger, a threat to American democracy? 2 separate people attempt to shoot him 2 separate times within 8 weeks. And that has nothing to do with the climate in the country. Again, I'm not blaming any of the people who say these sorts of things for the actual shooting. The person who's responsible is the shooter. It also happens to be the case, however, that in a really volatile climate, if you continue to increase the temperature, if you continue over and over to increase that temperature, you are going to get worse and worse situations. Raising that temperature does in fact become a sin when you know that things are this bad. And so it behooves everybody on the left side of the aisle to take down the temperature a few notches, to stop pretending that Donald Trump is a grave threat to the Republic. And by the way, they don't even believe that. Last week, Joe Biden put on a MAGA hat. He put on a Trump 2024 hat. Would he do that if he actually thought that the Trump 2024 hat were the equivalent of a swastika? Of course he would not. Would he really do that if he thought that Donald Trump was going to facilitate a tyrannical takeover of the country and end our democracy? Of course not. It's all nonsense. It's all been done for political gain. So again, we don't have all the details at this point. We're still awaiting more details. We'll bring them to you as we get them. Obviously, we'll be here updating you throughout the evening if anything of real magnitude breaks. But the president, former president, is fine, thank God. Second assassination attempt in 8 weeks. Huge news. We'll have much more on that on the show tomorrow, obviously.